Hey everyone, and welcome to a new series. It's the first just kind of test that I'm going to do, but it's going to be a IndyCar track guide. I want to try and do these for all the road courses for the iRacing IndyCar series, which starts in a few weeks at Barber. But Silverstone, the week just finished. There's going to be some good races that are going to get uploaded to the channel, and I thought, why not do a test, see how this is going to work. I'm going to try and live stream it and then just post it on YouTube right after. So it will be no editing, no nothing like that. Just me talking. I'm going to show you a lap that I just did, and then quickly go over some of the little details. Something to note is everything that I'm going to do is going to be with the Pure Driving School setup. That means that anyone who has access to that setup will be able to do the same kind of lap times and compare them to mine. It's going to be in the same weather as the PDS lap times will be done as well. So yeah, if you're a PDS member, this will be very useful, I hope, to you. Give you some more insight into driving than just looking at the hot lap. And if you're not looking at the telemetry already, I mean, why aren't you? But yeah, let's get started. So this was a 37.3 something. Not going to talk to you too much more, but yeah, let's show you the lap. So yeah, there's the lap, 37.3. And one thing just to note is that I did get an off track at the exit of Stowe, one of the final corners. In this case, it actually cost me time. I didn't gain time, but I'll go over that a bit more once we get to that point. So we're going to start with turn one, which is a flat out corner. The only real detail that I should point out is how early I turn in. I'm turning in before we get to the 50-meter point, and that's really so. If we go to the chase cam just for a second, you can see how much of this I cut, and turning in early guarantees that you're going to cut this as much as possible, and I just think that's the best way to minimize the amount of time that you spend actually running out wide. Something else that I did want to point out is if you go into the cockpit cam here, you'll notice that I'm kind of bouncing right on the rev limiter. Now, in some cases, you would want to have shifted up, so maybe slightly later in the fuel run, you'll want to go into 6 because you'll get to the limiter early. But because of how far we're reaching the limiter here, it's not really an issue. It's not going to overheat the engine, and when you shift up into 6, you fall out of the optimal power range of the engine. So in this case, I felt it was better to stay in 5th. But yeah, coming into the braking zone here, and we're braking right around the 100 meters here, and you'll notice just how hard we brake. I'm braking all the way. That's almost 90%, right? And trailing that off very slowly. So I maintained that peak pressure for quite a while, coming all the way up to the 50-meter point, shifting down slowly, using the engine to help shift down, and yeah, just kind of waiting till we get to the turn-in point. One thing that you'll notice here is how much I'm trailing the brakes in. That really helps get the car slowed down and turned as much as possible early. Because of the way this corner works, switching back to the chase cam, you want to not run out wide. You want to stick as close to this red inside curb as you can get. And you're actually going to see, I think I clipped the curb. Yep, actually I get a little bit of clip, on the curb. That really sets you up to come all the way to the right-hand side here, which you need to get a good exit back onto the Wellington Straight. And yeah, that it's your one opportunity to pass. So getting a good exit here is important. You see, I do get up all the way to full throttle, very briefly. I'm going to switch back to cockpit cam so you can just see what's happening. We'll go in full speed here so you can see it a bit more in detail. But you could actually see if you a little bit. The car rear started to step out a little bit, but if you're early in the fuel run, your tires are going to be okay enough that that's not a concern. But again here, using the brake to help turn. But what's more important here is that you use the throttle to turn the car. So you'll see I'm not even, fully at the apex of the corner technically. We're still going to go in another 90 degrees almost. So I'm getting on the throttle really early, and that helps turn the car. But not only does it turn the car, it's getting you on the power earlier, it's getting more momentum come to the end of the straight. So quickly go back to cockpit here. You'll notice again here I'm in 6th. Maybe earlier in the fuel run you'll be in 5th, but we're braking right around just before this 50-meter point. So yeah, right, again, hard on the brakes here, but this time trailing it off much earlier. And the important thing here is that you can try and cut this as much as possible. You don't get a slow down and off track here. And so here I don't really cut it that much. I kind of carried a bit too much speed, but that didn't hurt me too much because of how this next corner works, where it's a double apex. So in a lot of GT cars here, you'll actually run super wide and then cut back in, but because this is a downforce car, you don't run as wide. So you'll notice that I'm still hugging the inside fairly closely. Oh, going the wrong way. I'm hugging it fairly closely until about here. And here is when I put some more steering input in. So we're going to watch the steering input for a second. So it's fairly constant. And then you'll notice now, now we get to that 90 degrees, and that's right as we get to this double apex point. Okay, I need to get better at using these camera controls. That's the first thing I know, but you double apex it, get on the power nice and early, and then run out all the way wide onto this exit curb. Now it's super important with this current configuration because of what happens next. You'll notice right here, you can cut the entire portion of the track, and that is a significant time gain. So you want to make sure that you do that. And you want to arc it properly as well, but that's not as important as just cutting it first. Now we get to the old turn 1. Old turn 1 is a very high commitment corner. More high commitment than new turn 1 is, because new turn 1 is easy flat. Old turn 1 is you have to lift, and you have to lift very carefully. On full fuel, you're going to notice the car pushes out towards the outside of the track and into the off-track and slowdown zone a lot more. But even when you're low on fuel, it's not going to be easy. And if you're following behind someone in their dirty air, again, going to be very difficult, and you're going to have to try and run an alternate line, maybe lift a little earlier or even brake to get the car turned in. But here you'll notice braking maybe 10 meters before the 50-meter board and lifting all the way off. But then I actually get on the power a bit too early, and you can see me have to modulate it just a little bit because I was too eager to get on the throttle. And you want to try and avoid that because the earlier you can get full throttle, the better. But anyway, this is not an off track, just to note. That is perfectly legal. And now we run down to Maggotts Becketts. We're going to do this in a bit more slow motion, I think. So again, here you have to set the car up very early on the left-hand side. You need to be all the way on this right-hand side, left-hand side, touching the red curbing. That's what I meant to say. Now it becomes important because of how you're meant to take Maggotts Becketts, and I don't do a great job of doing it here. You can actually, if you turn in a bit earlier, can run much wider here, and that enables you to come carry much more speed through the next part of the corner. So you'll see that I actually have to, I'm constantly braking through this section, whereas if you're running a bit more on the outside, you could run a much more kind of, it's hard to do with the hand things, but you could run this kind of a line. So you could come around, whereas I'm coming like, much tighter instead of a much shallower angle. So you could take a lot more speed than I did here. That's not to say I didn't have a good exit here. So the important thing here is I got the car turned and I ran all the way on this inside curbing without taking a slowdown. If you run too much, you'll take a slowdown. But early on the power again, you got a long straight. I don't like to take too much curb. You could run all four wheels on the outside of this curb here, but you risk getting a slowdown. And that's not a risk I really want to run in a race, especially given how high commitment that corner is and how often you're pushing right up to the limit. Now this is, in my opinion, the hardest part of the track, and that's because of the way the track slopes off as you get to the mid-corner. So we're going to brake right around this little white start of the curb. When I'm trying not to use this, I'm very clear. I try to use this. So you'll see. And I don't use too much brake, and that's because I'm trying to carry as much momentum as possible over the crest of the hill. We're going to switch back into cockpit cam, because this is where I made the one mistake on the lap, which cost me a bit of time. So I turn in a bit early here, and that's not too bad. Sometimes you can get away with turning in early and clipping this part of the curb and running right up to the edge of the slowdown and being fine. However, what happened in this case was I carried too much speed. And when you carry too much speed, you tend to miss the part of the corner where you're trying to hit. So I missed the apex here, and I start sliding wide. And so what I do is I shift down into second. This is a third gear corner. Do not shift down into second. What I was trying to do with that is slow the car down a bit more so I could get back on the power and still attack the exit of the corner. Unfortunately, it was not enough, and I still ran it too wide and got the slowdown. Got an off track. Go to the chase cam here. What you can do is you can run all your four wheels up to this white line. The second you cross this white line, you get an off track. So I actually lost time in getting an off track here because I had to compromise my corner trying to avoid the off track. But you can carry a lot more speed than I think a lot of people think coming through this corner. It's a very high commitment, but again, in dirty air, it's not going to be as easy, and you're going to need to try and run alternate lines, which is something I've had to do in some of my races. Now we come down to the last corner, and this is not the hardest corner in my opinion, but it's the one I struggle to be consistent at on a regular basis. You're going to brake right before this 100 meter board, and you're going to wait to turn in. The reason why you're going to wait to turn in is because you want to take this as 90 degree as possible. So I didn't get as close to the curb as you could have. That's fine. But you can come all the way here, and again, you're trying to set up the corner so you come to this side of the track. You're not actually going to be able to come all the way to this side for this corner. You're just trying to. The important thing is you don't run too wide, because if you run wide, then you compromise the next corner too much. So here I actually did okay. You can see I got on the throttle, trying to attack the corner, turn the car on throttle, and it's alright. You're going to have to take a complete lift of the throttle here, though. Get back on the throttle as aggressively as possible. You'll notice I slid the rears quite a bit. Didn't lose too much time actually in this part because of how early I got on the throttle, but you want to avoid doing this because you'll cook the tires. And then yeah, last corner is flat out for a 37.311. Now, what do I think the optimal time is with this setup? I think I could probably do a 37.1, maybe even on full fuel, but I would suggest you try tweaking it. There's a few different things you can do. It's got a bit of high-speed understeer for one, so you can try and dial that out. In the slow corners, it actually feels really good on the mid part of it, but sometimes on entry it feels a bit sluggish, so you could try a few things to tweak that out. And I'm trying to think what else I felt with the setup. I think those are the main two things. The setup is really quite good, in fact, in my opinion, and I'm only a few tenths off what I was doing with my team setup, which is a setup we spent, hours working on between 3 or 4 of us. So, yeah, definitely give the setup a try. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the video, what I need to change. First time I'm doing one of these, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of learning that gets done in the future. But yeah, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get more videos. Go click the description. There will be a link to my Twitch where I'm doing all of these lives. You can talk to me as I'm doing them as well, ask me questions. You'll get to see me do the laps live as well. I stream that before I start doing this part of the video, so you can always ask me questions while I'm doing that as well. And yeah, if you have any more track guides that you'd like to see, maybe not in the IndyCar, let me know. But yeah, thanks for watching and see you next time.